Content?
Yes.
Here.
I see him.
Here.
Thank you. I'd like to report out on our closed session. On item A, public employee performance evaluation, we shared information. On item B, conference with labor negotiators for Csea, information was shared. And on item C, conference with labor negotiators, SMEA, information was shared. We are now ready to turn our meeting over to Miss Dr. Palmerston from Fessler Junior High School. And because we are Zooming or whatever, I know that there are students awaiting their opportunity to dazzle us. So good evening, Dr. Palmerston.
Thank you, Mrs. Cordero, and good evening, Board of Education. I'm Mr. Palmerston, Mark Palmerston, proud to be principal at Fessler Junior High. We have a variety of students who are with us this evening for our Pledge of Allegiance and Inspiration. So as I go to share my screen and our presentation, I'll ask that the students from Fessler turn on their cameras now to join us on screen. I'll give a big wave. So we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. And so with that, if we all could please stand. Right hand over our heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance
to the flag
of the United
States of America and to the republic
for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice
for all. Thank you. And so with us this evening, I am always honored not just to serve as principal, but to share about the work of our staff, our students, and our families at Fessler. And so this evening, we've tried to put together a group of students who represent many aspects of our school program. And so I'm going to introduce and go through our list as we go. And so I'm going to first introduce Gabrielle.
Good evening. My name is Gabrielle August, and tonight I'm representing our student leadership class. My favorite thing about returning to Fessler in person is the opportunity to collaborate with other students. The theme we chose this year is Falcons Assemble, a superhero theme. Our motto is Storm Your Limits. We chose this theme because for the past year and a half, we did school on the computer. Now that we are back on campus, we can come together as a school and achieve things we couldn't do before, even going beyond where our limits are. That is why part of our motto is soaring beyond our limits. I am now going to pass.
Already I'm on. All right, good evening. My name is Grady Corright, and tonight I'm representing our student leadership class. My favorite thing about returning to Fessler in person is being able to talk to my friends and teachers, rather than just seeing them on a screen. I'm now going to pass it on to Alexa.
Good evening. My name is Alexa Guerrero Almanza, and tonight I'm representing our student leadership class. My favorite thing about returning to Fessler in person is meeting people face to face. This also helps me because I learn better in person. Now I'm going to pass it on to Alyssa.
Good evening. My name is Elisa Guevara, and today I am representing our student leadership class. My favorite thing about returning to Fessler in person is being able to interact with other peers and staff face to face rather than a computer screen. As one of the students currently responsible for planning Spirit Weeks, I want to help both 7th and 8th graders to experience what it is like to get up in the morning, get stressed and have a successful spirit day, week, and school day. So my goal as a leader is to get students ready for school, what it is to be in person, and to resolve things happening in the classroom and out face to face rather than just being able to close a computer screen to avoid conflict and being challenged. I am now going to pass it on to Miguel.
Good evening. My name is Miguel Reyes Torres, and tonight I'm representing our student leadership class. My favorite thing about returning to Fester in person is that I feel like my classes are easier because I'm paying attention. Unlike when I'm at home, I get distracted easily. Another thing is that I can socialize with people and make new friends. I am now going to pass it on to Caesar.
Good evening. My name is Cesar Vasquez, and tonight I'm representing our student leadership class. My favorite thing about returning to Fessler in person is finally being able to interact with my peers and teachers. I also enjoy finally being able to express my ideas more clearly in the classroom and being able to understand my work more. I am now going to pass it on to Joelyn.
Good evening. My name is Joellen August, and tonight I'm representing our student leadership class. My favorite thing about returning to Fessler in person is seeing the students and teachers I saw on Zoom last year. In leadership, our goal is to create the most positive school environment for students. Here are some of the things we are planning this year to help all Falcons soar. We are planning a fun-packed fall festival, weekly updates, family nights, spirit weeks, red ribbon week, and much more. I am now going to pass it back to Mr. Palmerston.
Thank you, Joellen, and thank you to our student leaders. As you see, the development of our theme for the year really being modeled on a superhero theme about us coming back together and going beyond where we ever thought possible. Our student leaders take that and use that to propel the activities that you just heard about. In addition to that, there's a connection with our other classes. And so I want to turn it over to, let me advance my slides. And I want to turn it over to Regina, who can share with us this evening about one of the elective classes, 21st Century Literacy, and an activity they did in connection with our theme. Regina?
Good evening, my name is Regina Nieto Barriga, and today I'm representing my 21st Century Literacy class. My favorite thing about returning to Fessler in person is being able to be with other peers and teachers in person. In 21st Century Literacy skills, we combine writing assignments with technology skills. One of our first projects was connected to our Falcon Sword theme for the year. We designed graphics to illustrate our school theme and then printed them on the Cricut machine. This is an electronic cutting machine that will cut any design we create. Now, I'm going to pass it back to Mr. Palmerston.
Thank you, Regina. And so you can see some pictures of our students collaborating around the design and use of the Cricut machine to create those designs and actually print them. And then you can see them displayed in the classroom. The next part of our authentic showcase of student work is through our art classes. And so I want to turn it over to Johanna, who will share about her work in art class.
Good evening, my name is Joanna Diaz, and tonight I'm representing the art class. My favorite thing about returning to Fessler in person is getting to meet my teachers, and all my classmates also get to learn new things that are difficult to explain in person, but it's very easy to explain in person in Fessler. Now I'm going to pass it to Juraza.
I'm just checking our participants list. So we have a couple students who are having some technical difficulties. And so what we wanted to represent, and Johanna, can you help just a little bit with me kind of on the spot here? We have some pictures here illustrating our art class and in particular, our art show. And so on Monday, the 30th, our Fessler Art Junior High art students held their first art exhibition The students learned about blending color, specifically using acrylic paint, and each student created a giraffe family portrait. And so you see those being shared publicly on Instagram, and you can see both the outside pictures of the art show, as well as some in-class pictures that were set up for back to school night when students brought their families. They could see the art set up as well. And here are a couple other pictures of the art produced by our students in Mrs. Hicks' art class. Next, I want to introduce Rosario, who's representing our Avid and Avid Excel programs. Rosario, are you with us?
Good evening, my name is Rosario Gastelum Hernandez, and tonight I'm representing the Avid Excel classes. My favorite thing about returning to Fessler in person is getting good grades to help improve my learning experiences. I wanted to share about my Avid class. Some of the amazing things we do in class are fun activities that help improve our brain thinking skills and help us learn to work effectively with others. In my class, 10 of us were reclassified this fall and 5 others raised their overall score by at least 1 whole point. Now I'm going to pass it back to Mr. Palmerson.
Before you go, Rosario, that piece is to be commended, both for your progress in demonstrating English language proficiency, but as a class, that performance score. And so I just want to thank you for sharing that and congratulate you on your progress. So thank you. Next, I want to share a little about backtracking a little bit to our summer school programs. And I want to share a little bit, but I want to introduce Victor and have Victor help us a little bit. So Victor, can you come off mute and introduce yourself for us, please?
Hello, everyone. My name is Victor Quintero, and I am a student from Fessler. One thing that I like about summer school is that you can learn a little bit more and you can get your learning skills even better. And something that I like about summer school is return back to school, because when you're at home, you feel that you don't do anything at home. That's why I like to return back to school. That's one reason that I like to come back to school, because you can see your friends from school, or you can see your teachers. You can talk to your teachers, or sometimes your friends. You guys can talk to your friends as well.
Yeah. Victor, what did you tell me about campus? One of those things about coming to summer school, what did it help you do about our campus?
Our campus it's a big school, but many people was loving school because school is really important, and you can get your grades up. But one thing that my mom and my dad will always say, that you have to go to school for you can get your grades up. And I was totally honest. I would like to go to school and learn and I would like to graduate from junior high and then from high school, because it's something that I really like about school, getting my grades, not F's or D's, because if I get them bad, then I get a bad grade.
Thank you, Victor. And Victor attended summer school where we had 100 students in 7th and 8th grade at the first part of summer for a 3-week summer program. And we were able to have all students 7th and 8th grade in an English language arts class, a math class, and a science class. And so we were able to fully staff both 7th and 8th grade through those 3 classes for 100 students. And then at the end of the summer, we had our Summer Bridge 2-week program where we had 30 students in 7th and 8th grade, really reconnecting them to our campus prior to coming back. And one of the things Victor shared with me earlier is him coming back through the summer programs helped him also get to know the campus better. And so that was an important part. And then of course, our leadership students came for a 1-week Summer Bridge program for leadership. And so they began that work on our theme and really getting a head start on that. And so we wanted to share about our summer programs. And then the last bit of the overall programs I really wanted to share is something in conjunction with Mr. Erickson. Erickson, would you introduce yourself for us, please?
All right, let me go to my Google Docs.
Okay, well, tell us your name, Erickson.
Hello, everyone. My name is Erickson. Good evening. Erickson, if you don't know.
And Erickson, tell us your favorite thing about returning in person.
My favorite thing, I have to say, being everyone back into face-to-face.
Yeah, and so Erickson's saying, hey, coming back face-to-face is so important. And the reason why I invited Erickson is the first Zoom meeting we had for the year for Fessler, we had over 400 participants. We actually had 414 parents and families that joined us for our first Fessler Zoom meeting. This is something that we're really proud of, increasing our parent participation through the use of Zoom meetings and the fact that families can be together. And on that Zoom meeting, Erickson, being a 7th grader, had never come to Fessler before, but had the confidence to come off mute and engage in great questions and conversations in front of the whole group. And really just proud of his transition to junior high, but also the fact that he's confident enough to share on Zoom. And so Erickson, thank you so much for joining us tonight. And his part, I really wanted to just share with you what we've done with parent participation in our Zoom meetings. First, I shared with you we've increased participation and the number of families that we can reach through Zoom, and the fact that they're participating together and often from places that wouldn't allow them to come in person, from work, from other family events. And I gave you some numbers. Our first one was 414 people. Our last Zoom meeting was over 230 participants, and that's pretty consistent for us, something we've been proud of. But this isn't Fessler alone. I want to give a shout out to all of our junior highs, because together we presented 2 different parent Zoom nights as a junior high team together. I think this is super critical, that it's not just one school, but that we're working together. In addition, I always want to give a shout out to my Fessler cluster and the work we do together. So Adam, Alvin, Battles, and Miller, and the fact that we've already presented 1 parent Zoom meeting together, and we're already planning another one for later in this month. And so I wanted to share with the board what we're doing around parent engagement, in particular, continuing our outreach on Zoom. We're now at Fessler, we're typically doing those on a Monday evening, and we're using a Zoom just like you see here, where all participants are on screen, and we're using sequential interpretation. So we hold 1 meeting where we have English presentation followed directly by the Spanish translation, and we go in sequence. And then the other thing that's been so crucial is just staying on and answering all the questions. Even if the same question comes up over and over and over again, we're there patiently ensuring that all questions are answered. And that has been super helpful for not just us, but for our parents and families. And so with parent engagement, this part then, I just want to switch over to some gratitudes. I want to first just really thank the students who came to represent here this evening. And so if we can give them a little thumbs up, a big wave. But also for all of our students at Fessler who have definitely come back with energy and excitement to be together. The excitement to learn. I want to really give a shout out to our staff, our classified staff, our certificated staff, all adults on campus who come to make the learning experience a positive one for our students. And our work has not gotten easier. It continues to be incredibly challenging work, but it's incredibly valuable, not just for myself and what I get out of our work with students every day, but for our children. And so with those gratitudes, just really want to say thank you to the board. And always that invitation. If you'd like to come out to a school site and see us in action, you're always welcome to come out. Please feel free to email me, give us a call. But in all, Falcons soar. And if you'd like to connect with us on social media, on Instagram, Fessler Falcons. And so with that, forever grateful for the opportunity to share our work at Fessler.
Thank you, Dr. Palmerston, and all of the Falcons that were eager and willing to participate tonight. It's wonderful to hear student voices once again and see your faces without masks. Hopefully someday in the not too distant future, we'll be able to see your bright, shiny faces here in person. But we thank you for the very, very hard work that you are doing and your diligence toward accomplishing your goals. And it's, as adults, I think we understand how important it is to connect person to person, and for our students to have that same understanding is extremely gratifying. You too feel the need to connect on a personal level with not only your teachers, but your friends and other peers, and to meet new people and have real experiences. So thank you very, very much for joining us this evening.
And so with that, Fessler Falcons, if you'd come off mute and just say Falcon Soar, you guys are excused and the board will continue their work for another several hours this evening. So come off mute and say Falcon Soar.
Falcon
Soar.
Falcon Soar.
Yay.
Great job. Thank you.
Great job, everybody.
All right, thank you all, and have a great evening.
Thank you, Mark, very much for your time and effort. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
It's an honor and a pleasure. Have a great evening.
You too. Thank you very much.
Oh, and with that, we will move forward. And again, our kudos to Dr. Palmerston and his staff and the amazing students that came together to just give us a little glimpse of, you know, how they're feeling and what it's like to be back. Our calendar of upcoming meetings and events, our next regularly scheduled meeting will be October 13th.
And if I could just interject on that, the governor's order allowing Zoom meetings expires. The Brown Act waiver expires on September 30th. So unless there is an extension of that, and that remains to be seen, you know, in terms of the Delta situation, at this point, we would be convening that next meeting in person. And so what I guess I'm looking for is, if there is an extension, would the board prefer to remain in the remote setting if it's allowable?
Yeah.
I would just say I would love to be able to see students, families, community members, but for the sake of, you know, ensuring the safety of as many people as possible, I would also recommend that we continue on Zoom. Although it's not my preference, it is the safest option, I think, at this point.
So, do you have consensus on that?
Yeah.
So as it stands right now, though, that order expires September 30th.
Yeah,
so
I
unless
understand
there
that.
is extension,
Okay.
but if there's an extension, then we would proceed with the next meeting over the electronic format. Okay, thank you.
Especially after seeing the numbers from the last 3 days,
Yeah. It's in everyone's best interest. And it does appear that that is the direction that it will move. So we'll see. Public comment, open session. The public comments are intended for members of the public to address the Board of Education on items involving the school district. Such testimony shall be limited to 3 minutes each, or 450 words per person, subject, and 15 minutes total for each topic. If an answer to a specific question is requested, the board president will, if appropriate, direct administration to respond in writing. Do we have comments on agenda items?
We have comments only on item 8C this evening. There are 4 comments that I'll read at the time that item is presented.
Okay, comments on agenda items as they appear in the agenda. So with that, is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
I second.
Okay, it has been moved by Mr. Hollinshead, seconded by Mrs. Flores to approve the agenda as presented. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Consent agenda. Actions proposed for the consent agenda are consistent with adopted policies and approved practices of the district and are deemed routine in nature. They will be acted upon by roll call vote in one motion without discussion unless members of the board request an item's removal from the consent agenda, in which event it will be taken up in the order indicated on the main agenda. Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion to approve the consent agenda as a.
I second.
It has been moved by Mr. Lara, seconded by Mrs. Flores, to approve the consent agenda as presented. Roll call, please.
Cordero?
Aye.
Mr. Lara?
Aye.
Flores?
Aye.
Mr. Collins?
Aye.
Mr. Valenti?
Aye.
Motion carries. Moving into action items, item 7A is the 2020-2023 collective bargaining agreement with Csea.
Good evening, Board President. Good evening, Board, and members of the community. Tonight, we bring forward the Santa Maria Bonita School District and Santa Maria Elementary Education Association's 2020-2023 collective bargaining agreement to ratify and approve. After starting negotiations in November of 2019, we came to an agreement this past August, July actually, and the association ratified it August 17th, and we're bringing it forward to you tonight to be ratified and approved. It includes all of the articles listed in the summary, as well as the tentatively agreed upon adjusted salary schedules and appendices. In addition, we present the public disclosure of proposed collective bargaining agreement in accordance with AB 1200, which states that the superintendent and chief business official hereby certify that the district can meet the costs incurred under this collective bargaining agreement during the terms of the agreement from July 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2023. Any questions?
Are there any questions?
I don't think so.
Is there a motion?
I make a motion that the Board of Education adopt the 2020-2023 collective bargaining agreement with Csea as presented.
I'll second.
It has been moved by Mrs. Flores, seconded by Mr. Lara, to adopt the 2020-2023 collective bargaining agreement with Csea. All those in favor signify by aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
We should all clap and cheer. Item 7B, agreement between Csea and its Santa Maria Elementary Chapter number 129 and the Santa Maria Bonita School District.
Thank you, Board President.
Thank you.
We were able to discuss a Me Too with the California Schools Employees Association and its Santa Maria Bonita Chapter 129, and agreement was made to agree to the on-schedule increase of 3% for the 21-22 school year and the 1.5% for the 22-23 school year, and also that all articles, the entire collective bargaining agreement for 2020-2023 are hereby closed with no reopeners. This is just for this collective bargaining agreement and completes all negotiations between the parties for the 2020-2021, 21-22, and 22-23 school years. And in accordance with the requirements of Government Code Section 3547.5, the superintendent chief business official hereby certify that the district can meet the costs incurred under this understanding with Csea and its Santa Maria Bonita Chapter 129. Recommendation is that the Board of Education approve the tentative salary understanding with California School Employees Association and its Santa Maria Bonita Chapter 129 as presented. Any questions?
Thank you. Is there a motion?
I'll move to approve the tentative salary understanding with the California School Employees Association and its Santa Maria Bonita Chapter 129 is presented.
I second.
It has been moved by Mr. Hollinshead, seconded by Mrs. Flores, to approve the tentative salary understanding with the California School Employees Association and its Santa Maria Bonita Chapter 129 as presented. All those in favor, please signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 7C, ratification of salary understanding with administrators in management service.
Thank you, Board President. So with the other two as well, this is a ratification of salary understanding with our administrators in management service and confidential employees. And it's a tentative understanding that the salary increase agreed upon with our Teachers Association will be also applied to our administrators in management service, starting with the 2020-2021 school year, then the 21-22 school year, and the 22-23 school year. And in accordance with the requirements of Government Code section, the Superintendent Chief Business Official hereby certify that the district can cover the costs incurred under this understanding with Ames. And the recommendation is that the Board of Education approve the tentative salary understanding with Ames as presented. Any questions?
Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion that the Board of Education approve the tentative salary understanding with Ames as presented.
I second.
It has been moved by Mr. Laura, seconded by Mrs. Flores, that the Board of Education approve the tentative salary understanding with Ames as presented. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 7D, public hearing, compliance with Education Code 60119 and CCR Title 5, Section 9531C, sufficiency of instructional materials. Ms. Loftus.
Yes, good evening, Superintendent Ontiveros and school board members. This evening, I have both the sufficiency of instructional materials public hearing and the resolution of that. As you mentioned, under Ed Code 60119, each year we are required to hold a public hearing on the availability and sufficiency of core instructional materials. Textbook and Chromebook distribution has occurred, and all of our core curriculum continues to be accessible online. It is now an expectation that all students may take their Chromebook to and from school daily. Doing this provides access to all of our core instructional materials, both at school and at home. We also continue the practice of providing students with hotspots if there is a need. A review of the textbook and Chromebook distribution, along with verification of student access to core curriculum, has occurred, and I'm proud to say that SMBSD exceeds the sufficiency requirements.
And with that, I will open the public hearing for any public comments. I think I'm supposed to. Okay. I need a little ding, ding, ding. All right, don't everybody try to talk at once. And don't laugh. I don't see any hands going up, and I don't see anything coming in the chat. I forgot that was called. We do have 30 people here, so is there anyone? Calling once, twice, and ding, ding, ding. Your chance is over. The public hearing is closed, and we will move on to item 8E, which is the resolution 21-01, compliance with Education Code Section 060119, CCR Title V, Section 9531C, Sufficiency of Instructional Materials. Is there anything additionally that you would like to add, Ms. Loftus?
No, thank you though.
Are there any questions?
I did notice that it specifically mentioned including English language development in the programs. And so I'm assuming, Ms. Loftus, that this means like support for our emerging multilingual learners. Could you tell us a little bit more about what supports are available to them through this?
Our designated ELD program is in alignment with our ELA program. And so it is included within StudySync, and it is also included within Benchmark Advance. All of our curriculum also provides integrated ELD supports and scaffolds. And what we're really excited about is that those scaffolds and supports are very interactive, because we have access to those materials online now, which really allows a teacher to customize the scaffolds and supports that a student would receive, helping them to further access that core grade level curriculum.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Is there a motion?
I'll move to adopt Resolution 21-01, compliance with Educational Code, Section 60119, and CCR Title V, Section 9531C, Sufficiency of Instructional Materials as presented.
I second.
It has been moved by Mr. Hollinshead, seconded by Mrs. Flores, to adopt Resolution 21-01, compliance with Education Code Section 60119 and CCR Title V, Section 9531C, Sufficiency of Instructional Materials. Roll call, please. Aye.
Aye.
Flores,
Aye.
Mr. Hollinshead,
Aye.
Sorry.
Mr. Valencia.
Aye.
Okay, and motion carries. I think we're having a hard time hearing you.
Really? Okay, I'll work on that.
That's much better right there.
Okay.
Okay. All right, and so moving now to item 7F. Approve the significant disproportionality comprehensive coordinated early intervening services plan. And before I hand this over to Mr. Thompson, I personally would just like to express my appreciation for the information. And while it was, lengthy and some of it was quite repetitive, it was very complete. And I made some notes to myself and feel that I have a pretty comprehensive understanding of what the process was and what we will be doing as we move forward. So I thank you very much for that. And with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Board Member Cordero. Just gonna set up my screen share.
There you go.
Okay. Good evening, Superintendent Ontiveros, members of the board, and members of the community. Tonight, I have been asked to present our significant disproportionality coordinated early intervening services, or CSACE plan. I will begin by stating that disproportionality is the overrepresentation of students in special education in identification, location, and/or discipline by race or ethnicity, and is part of the federal monitoring requirement from IDEA. As first discussed with you back in February, the district has been found to be significantly disproportionate in the representation of students with disabilities by race or ethnicity by disability. specifically white students with autism. Because of this, the district was required to create this CSACE plan. With SIGDIS comes funding implications. We need to use 15% of our federal special education dollars over the next 27-month period to implement initiatives that will address the SIGDIS and ensure we are preventing under or over identification. Now, we would like to point out that this is not new or additional funding, but it comes out of the current allocations of federal money that is mandated to be used for these activities. Now, the use of these funds could have some impact on the general fund, as we still have an obligation to continue to meet our maintenance of effort for special education. And for us, it would be approximately $528,000 set aside for this work. This 27-month journey to improvement will occur in 4 phases. Last time we brought this to you was in February, at the beginning of phase 1. We are currently in phase 3. In phase 1, the district established a leadership team and later a stakeholder group that partnered with Dr. John Eiler of Collaborative Learning Solutions, CLS. CLS and Dr. Eiler are part of the approved State Performance Plan Technical Assistance Project. Dr. Eiler, along with Susan Bobbitt-Both and Kathy Cox from CLS, helped guide the leadership team and the stakeholder group to apply a cultural lens as we work through the discovery of data process and determination of the root causes associated with our significant disproportionality. This process constituted over 14 hours of teamwork so that this plan could be developed. Based on the evidence provided through the data discovery process collected with these studies listed in the right-hand column, the stakeholder group was able to identify key findings and determine root causes for the district's disproportionality. So what the stakeholder group learned was the root causes were associated with 4 main areas. Access. There is a lack of access to information, training, and resources across stakeholders to properly identify students who may be at risk for failure, have social emotional learning needs, or are exhibiting behaviors that are impacting their learning ability. Systemness. The implementation of supports, services, and knowledge of available interventions is inconsistent across sites within the district. And as a result, not all students have access to all available interventions. Cultural responsiveness. The district has identified the need to increase cultural responsiveness to the influence of race, ethnicity, culture, language, and social class, and has begun to provide training in diversity, equity, and inclusion for staff. In parent engagement, there is a lack of information provided to parents regarding interventions and systems of supports available in Santa Maria Bonita School District. And as a result, students are not provided with supports and services during the critical development period when early intervention can avoid loss of learning and development of foundational skills. Phase 3, planning for improvement. This plan is part of a process for systems change designed to provide Santa Maria Bonita School District and school improvement teams with knowledge and technical expertise to develop a thorough understanding of problems, issues, and concerns in their schools and what action needs to be taken to address disproportionality. Which is why all departments in instructional services will collaborate in order to achieve the following outcomes. Creating a task force in partnership with stakeholders and outside agencies to review and discuss interventions in an effort to reduce the possible misidentification of students with autism. The district will track interventions, number of referrals, and ultimately the number of those students determined eligible for special education, with the anticipation that this will lead to a reduced number of students referred to and eventually requiring special education. The district will provide professional development in the areas of English language development and cultural biases to administrators, kindergarten and grade 1 staff, and those providing MTSS interventions at the target sites. The district will form a parent advisory committee to collaborate with existing parent committees to develop and provide a parent academy with the goal of increasing parent and school partnerships. And finally, implementing their programmatic improvement plan, where the target population will be students in kindergarten and grade 1 at Bruce and Bonita Elementary, who have the lowest grade level average RIT scores on the district's benchmark assessments as administered currently through the NWEA. We have become familiar with our vision for student success, and part of the CSACE process is to identify connections to the current district initiatives and align efforts so that we meet our vision. Phase 4, next steps. Our plan seeks to address our significant disproportionality through providing coordinated early intervening services to students in hopes that they respond to the interventions, ultimately not requiring special education services. The district plans to do this by conducting activities outlined in this plan, evaluating effectiveness of those activities and interventions, building on those successes to create systemic and sustainable change. Someone in this room would say we would achieve systemness. The activities will address each root cause, eliminating significant disproportionality within the district. I want to personally thank the leadership team and the stakeholder group for their hard work in reviewing all of the data and establishing the groundwork for which this plan is based, and for the technical assistance provided by Collaborative Learning Solutions throughout this process. I thank you and would welcome any questions the board may have at this time.
Are there any questions for Mr. Thompson? Yes.
Thank you so much, Eric, for that excellent presentation. Something that caught my attention was that one of the requirements moving forward to improve is to have professional development around English language development as well as cultural bias. And how does that tie into the work that we're going to be doing across the district? Because it sounds like this is particular to special education. So how can we combine these two efforts, since this is a direction that we're going to be going in as a district?
Absolutely. Great question. And the idea is that this isn't a special education plan, that this is a plan for all students. And it wants, the state wants us to create a plan that aligns with and is consistent with current district initiatives. So that's part of why we were looking to do this, was the connection to the work around diversity, equity, and inclusion, as well as the work around ELD.
That sounds really great. Thank you so much for clarifying that.
Certainly.
Any other questions or comments? Well, as I stated at the beginning, I personally spent quite a bit of time reviewing this. This is a unique plan, a little different than ones that we often are looking at, and found that you know, the repetitiveness of it helped to solidify what the concepts were. And I personally feel like I have a good understanding of the process and what we will be doing as we move forward. So I appreciate that a great deal.
Thank you.
I enjoyed seeing all of the players in this plan. It really helped me understand the time commitment and the expertise that we have in the district also to make this plan to have the movement of this plan go into effect and continue the strength that it brings to all of our students in improving their learning. So thank you for that.
Is there a motion?
I motion that the Board of Education approve the significant disproportionality comprehensive coordinated early intervening services plan as presented.
I second.
It has been moved by Mr. Valencia, seconded by Mrs. Flores, to approve the significant disproportionality comprehensive coordinated early intervening services CSACE plan as presented. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any noes? Motion carries. And thank you very much, Mr. Thompson. Sorry.
Eric Thompson.
Eric. That's where I got the Erickson. So thank you. And because it is very lengthy, it will take me a moment to move to item 7G. 7G, approve the American Rescue Plan Act Elementary and Secondary School Relief Fund, ESSER 3, Safe Return to In-Person Instruction, Local Educational Agency Plan. Mrs. Herrick.
Thank you, Mrs. Cordero. This in our oops. Sorry about that. Here we go. So thank you again, Mrs. Cordero. Good evening, board members, Superintendent Ontiveros, cabinet members, and our stakeholders in the audience. This evening, I am bringing forth the updated American Rescue Plan Act Elementary and Secondary Relief Fund Safe Return to In-Person Instruction Plan. As a quick reminder, the American Rescue Plan was signed into law by Congress on March 11, 2021, and it has provided and will continue to provide school relief funds, also known as ESSER funds, to state and educational agencies. So our original plan was put into place last year. The plan is a fluid plan and must be updated every 6 months to memorialize what we are doing in our schools. It is a lagging document because it is not a plan for how we are going to do our work. It is a plan that is updated to reflect what we are currently doing within our schools. This is the second update of our plan, which will align with our ESSER 3 budget plan that will be presented to the board in October. It reflects the shifts that are rapidly occurring due to health and safety reasons, and it reflects the continuity of services that we are providing and will continue to provide for all of our students. The U.S. Department of Education Return to School Roadmap continues to guide our planning. The goal of the roadmap is to make sure every student has the support and opportunities they need to learn and grow in their classrooms and creates an environment where they belong and can thrive. The roadmap contains 3 landmarks. The first one is to prioritize health and safety of students, school personnel, and families. The second landmark is to build school communities and support students' social, emotional, and mental health. And the third landmark is to accelerate academic achievement. All three of these priorities have been updated in our plan. Examples of updates within our plan under health and safety include social distancing requirements that have changed. We conduct contact tracing following updated guidelines, and we continuously are addressing ventilation needs where applicable. These have all been updated according to the latest health and safety guidelines, which are also current in our COVID prevention plan. Another example of an update or addition to our plan is under the Accelerated Academic Achievement section. This section now outlines our traditional model of in-person learning and the new independent learning model. Our plan is located on our website and will continue to be updated every 6 months. In October, the ESSER 3 budget plan will be presented, which will align with this plan. We will continue to work diligently to promote the mental, social, emotional, and academic well-being of our students. So at this time, I wonder if you have any questions.
I have trouble getting my little cursor moved around here. Hearing no questions, it was total silence.
Crickets.
I do believe, Mrs. Herrick, that we, as a board, CSBA sends out daily updates with a lot of the things that are going on in regard to return to school and the COVID updates. And we understand that the plan, outlines what the basic procedures are. So I'm, without getting into specific questions about contact tracing or how do we really know if kids have COVID and all of that kind of stuff. I think we appreciate that the requirements of the plan and what our intentions are in alignment with what the guidelines and expectations are during this particular situation. So is there a motion?
I'll motion that the Board of Education approve the updated ESSER 3 safe to in-person instructional plan as presented.
I second.
Mr. Valencia has moved. Mrs. Flores has seconded the motion to approve the updated ESSER 3 safe to in-person instructional plan. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much, Mrs. Herrick.
Thank you.
Item 7H, Resolution 21-02, establish 2020-2021 appropriations limit pursuant to Article 8B of the California Constitution. Mr. Beecher, it's your turn now.
Thank you very much, Ms. Cordero. This is always for me and I think for Brian as well, landmark in our processes and reports to the school board. When we get to these items in September, we know we are closing the books on 1 year, and for the next 3 months, we get to live in just one fiscal year. It's really nice. Starting in December, or in January, we get the governor's budget, and then we start projecting the next year. And then for the 9 months after that, we live in 2 or more years, trying to make sure that we are providing information that gives the board, good information about the choices that need to be made, and inform the board on exactly what's happening, at least what we know is happening related to our finances. But leading off is the discussion of the Gan Limit And I'll hand that out to Mr. King to share with you.
Great, thank you, Mr. Beecher. So as Matt mentioned, this is the Gan Limit. It's an annual housekeeping item. In 1979, Paul Gan helped enact Prop 4, which limited the growth in government spending to be no faster than the growth of population and inflation. Later, that was changed to be based on a change in per capita personal income. So each year, the school district is required to prepare Gan Limit calculations and have the governing board adopt a resolution to identify the appropriations limit for the district. The Gan Limit calculations is automatically done with the program, the SACS program that we use when we do unaudited actuals. So it just kind of spits out the number for us. We don't have to really do too much. The Gan Limit's only constraint, the appropriations from state and local sources and not federal aid. So that's excluded. So in essence, what the Gan Limit does is it's there to limit or control the local authority of districts to levy or increase taxes. But when Prop 13 came around, the power for districts levy taxes was essentially taken away. So the 2021 actual appropriations limit calculation is $117,494,380. And the estimate for 21-22 is $124,226,808. So presented for your consideration and adoption is this resolution for the recalculation of the 2021 limit and the estimate for 21-22.
Are there any questions? As he indicated, this is something that is done annually. It's based on a fixed percentage and builds from year to year. Hearing none, is there a motion?
I'll make the recommendation that the Board of Education adopt resolution 21-02, establish 2020-21 appropriations limit pursuant to Article 13B of the California Constitution as presented.
I second. It has been moved by Mr. Lara, seconded by Mrs. Flores to adopt resolution 21-02, establish 2020-21 appropriations limit pursuant to Article, I said 8B, I guess I forgot my Roman numerals, 13B. I thought that was a V. If it was a V, it would be 8 of the California Constitution. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Cordero?
Aye.
Mr. Lara?
Aye.
Mrs. Flores?
Aye.
Mr. Hollinshead?
Aye.
Mr. Valencia?
Aye.
Thank you, Mrs. Flores, for not embarrassing me. I did it myself. She's the queen of Roman numerals. I just know that.
And Linda, can I request a 5-minute recess? Would that be okay?
I think we probably have 5 minutes to spare, so we will take a 5-minute break. To those watching, we started in closed session quite a bit earlier, so we need a little relief. Thank you.
I have to be looking at you because it's right over my head.
All right, we are reconvened at exactly 7:10. We are moving on to item 7I. Certification of the 2020-21 unaudited actuals. And once again, I'll start with you, Mr. Beecher.
And thank you very much. I kind of introduced this group of items that we have tonight. So I'll directly hand it off to Mr. King to share this item with you.
Great, thank you, Mr. Beecher. Good evening, board. So I'll be going over the 2021 unaudited actuals. So this year, I'm not going to stick with my usual presentation. Why? Well, because 2021 was not a normal year for us. And so I wanted to take a different approach and hit on our largest fiscal matters. So tonight we'll look at revenues, expenditures, ending fund balance, our COVID dollars, historical spending, and the demands that are on our fund balance. Here's revenues at a glance. This is look back 10 years of our actual revenue. If you look at 2013-14, that's the first year of when LCFF came around. We had revenue of 127 million. And then in 1920, it bumped up to 228 million. And then in 2021, we had another big jump to 259 million. You'll notice that in 2021, that red bar, so that's federal revenue. These are COVID dollars. COVID dollars are one time. And so we had a nice large increase of our federal revenue, which then bumped up our total revenue for the year. And then you notice in 21-22, our revenue goes back down to about 234 million because of we don't have those one-time COVID dollars anymore. So moving on to the expenditures at a glance. When you have higher revenue, then you usually have higher expenditures. In 2013-14, when LCFF came around, we had expenditures of 125 million. That has steadily increased to 220 million in 1920 and in 2021. And then we have a gradual increase in the 21-22, 22-23, and 23-24. You'll notice the blue, which is certificated salaries, that makes up the largest portion of our expenditures for the district. General fund expenditures by function. So what is a function? Function represents the what, or the activities or services performed. So 63.9% of our expenditures are for instruction. Those are activities dealing directly with the interaction between teachers and students. We have instruction related expenditures at 13.1%. These are activities provide administrative support to enhance instruction. We have our pupil services, which is 7.4%. Activities to aid the student that are not direct instruction. For example, those are counselors, psychologists, health services, transportation. We have our general admin in green. That's 4.4%. That's district-wide administrative activities. Our plant services, 7.2%. Activities concerned with keeping the physical plant comfortable and safe. It's basically keeping the doors open. That includes custodial, maintenance, grounds, and utilities. And then we have our other outgo, which is at 4%. It's transferred to other funds, and also the largest piece of that is payments to our county office for our special education services with the SELPA. Fund balance history. This goes back 13 years. You notice from 2007-8 through 14-15, there's some blue in there. Those are deferrals. Those were many years of deferrals that we had. And then deferrals creep back in 1920 and 2021. You'll see blue there. But you notice our ending fund balance for 2021 is at 96.6 million. 21-22, it's at 97 million, in addition to 2023, and then 23-24 down to 93 million. Looking back at 2021, it's made up of deferrals, restricted, committed, and a small little sliver of unrestricted. I'll be back in December with the first interim, and I do anticipate the ending fund balances to be less than that are shown here. One of the reasons is we'll be paying for the salary increases, those retro payments. So we should have a decrease in our fund balance. And once again, this is just a snapshot in time at our unaudited actuals. So moving on, I want to update the board on our COVID-19 dollars in terms of the allocation amount, amount received, amount spent, and term, or how long we have to spend these dollars. I'm breaking it out between, there's orange and blue. You'll see orange are federal dollars, blue are state dollars. You'll notice that it's mostly orange. Most of our funds are from the federal side. So this bucket here, we had until basically the end of 2021 to spend these dollars, and we did spend all those dollars. Second grouping, we have 1 year to spend these dollars, basically by September 30th of 2022. We have another grouping that we have 2 years to spend these COVID dollars by September 30th, 2023. And the biggest chunk, we have 3 years to spend this grouping of COVID dollars by September 30th, 2024. At the very bottom there, you'll see Senate Bill 117. There's no deadline on spending that small dollar amount there. I did want to highlight and point out that each bucket, there's 15 of these. Each one has a separate resource code and a separate bucket with their own slightly different requirements of how dollars should be spent. So moving on, this is a summary of the last two slides. So our total allocation amount for COVID relief dollars is $89.7 million. We have received $34.2 million. We've spent $27.2, and we have some unspent allocation of $62.5 million. I did want to lay it out by the timeline we have to spend these dollars. So we have the completed line there. We have 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, and then no deadline. Looking at this, you might wonder why we have spent dollars with a longer spending timeline before those funding streams with a shorter spending timeline. The answer is that after we started spending these dollars, the timelines changed. They gave us more time. So basically what happened is they changed the rules halfway through on these. 4-year historical spending and ending fund balance. So this here is, I pulled directly from Escape Online. Escape Online is the district's financial and position control system. I want to highlight, there's 4 years here from 17-18 all the way through 2021. Basically lays out in summary what our revenue is and our total expenditures. And that last line there, calculated ending balance. So that is comparing revenue and expenditures. Did our ending fund balance go up for that year or go down? And I did want to highlight a couple facts. So COVID required a complete shutdown in March of 2020. In 1920, we spent less on subs, transportation, and crossing guards. And in 2021, we did receive over $34 million of COVID dollars. And those all have an impact there at that bottom line, the calculated ending fund balance. So some takeaways: spending is in line within the past compared to the past. So you look at 17-18, 18-19, our revenue is very close to, our expenditures are very close to what our revenue is. So we had just a small increase in ending fund balance of $421,000 in 17-18, 18-19 about $800,000. But other funding sources came to the district to fund activities. And like in 1920, we had some less costs. So we did have an increase of our ending fund balance. And then you'll notice in 2021, we have a big jump in our ending fund balance of $36 million. Just to highlight that we did receive a lot of COVID dollars and we didn't spend them all in 2021. The district is mostly focused on instruction. Moving on to fund balance. So ending fund balance for 2021 came in at $96.5 million. I wanted to kind of break apart that $96 million. So 170 is non-spendable. That's inventory, prepaid expenditures. We have restricted dollars, 17.1. We have our required 3% reserve for economic uncertainty, 6.75 million. We have our lottery dollars, 3.1 million. That's for instructional materials and budgets for sites and departments. We have our committed by resolution, 35.2 million. That's made up of set aside for textbooks and also for the recommendation of a 17% set aside for the district. So the remaining available is 34.1 million. So what are the demands on the remaining available fund balance? Well, universal TK, pre-kindergarten at every campus. We have declining enrollment, which then equals lower ADA, which then in turn equals lower funding. So what are the impacts of COVID-19 in the long term? Don't quite know that. Ventilation at school sites, and then the bargaining unit settlements paid in 2021 and beyond. So with that, I can answer any questions.
Brian, just a question about the 3% requirement. Does that mean we have 6.7 million reserved? And if that's the amount, like what do we use those funds for if need be?
The 6.7 million is the state requires us to have a minimum of 3% reserve requirement. And that 6.7 million is that 3%.
And that's, of course, for only in case of emergencies, right? If need be. And if so, could we use those for anything that's needed, or are those restricted?
Well, those are unrestricted. But if we only had 3% reserve, it'd be pretty scary. That 3% doesn't even cover 1 month of payroll. And so that's the minimum requirement. But that's why we have that committed by resolution, that 35.2. We have 4 million for textbooks and an additional 31 million, which is the recommendation of a set aside of 17 million. So we have that 3% and then an additional 14 in that committed line there.
So it sounds like we actually have much more available than 6.7 for emergency purposes.
Well, our ending fund balance is the $96.5 million.
And Mr. Valencia, your question about the 3% piece and what do we use that for? The main, I guess the mechanic behind the 3% is essentially our report card and then the county's approval that the reserves we have in our budget are sufficient to accomplish and approve our budgets and our AB 1200 collective bargaining agreement settlements and those kinds of things. If you have at least that in reserve, you can do those other things without the county having to intervene. You don't really ever get to spend those dollars unless by statute, the legislature and the governor agree that they can waive the 3% to be less, right? And they've done that in a couple occasions. The district has not had to take advantage of that flexibility, but they do every once in a while waive that requirement to give districts flexibility to dip into those funds. But the problem is it's really, really hard to build those funds back when your budget is so strained that you need that money, right? So we always want to just have that there, again, for our report card and that checkoff so the county can say they have what they need to make these commitments and continue. So that's the main purpose behind the 3% required reserve.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion that the Board of Education approve the 2021 unaudited annual as presented and forward in positive certification to the county superintendent of schools.
I second.
It has been moved by Mr. Lara, seconded by Mrs. Flores, to approve the 2020-2021 unaudited actuals as presented and forward a positive certification to the county superintendent of schools. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 7J, authorization to execute a sole source agreement with Family Service Agency for Santa Barbara County for Migrant Education Therapeutic Services. Mr. Beecher.
Thank you very much, President Cordero. I'm actually excited to bring this item to you tonight as our first request for a sole source approval from the school board. Sole sourcing is allowable under certain circumstances under both federal and state regulations where you aren't able to provide a similar service using a formal bid process. And so that's kind of the situation we're in tonight. We aren't able to place a public bid or an RFP out in time to get these services deployed for students because they are in school and they are needing these services right now. The other thing that makes this possible for us to do is that we did recently, and the school board did recently act on several RFPs, some of which had similar services in them. And so because we kind of have maybe a measuring stick on the costs of these services, we can look at this amount in this item tonight and say, that's reasonable within the market. They're a little bit higher than what we had gone through the formal process for, but we believe that's because there are fewer positions. And so their ability to stretch out the overhead that might be applied to, let's say, 18 or 20 different positions is a little more weighted on just these 4. And so they're a little more expensive for that reason. I think also just the urgency of placing these services right now may have added to the cost, but it is allowable in these circumstances, just again, to meet the urgency of getting these needs out there. Also, we're finding in other parts of our business that finding supplies is very difficult. We're seeing it within our transportation services where we're having a hard time tracking down drivers. We're finding it amongst many of our staffing positions where we're looking for new employees to join us. We're finding it in just our supplies for food service and many other locations where we're being told by vendors, you better buy this while you can because there are strains on our supply lines. So in those circumstances also, you can sole source if you know I have a vendor who can provide these within the time frame where I know I can secure them for our operations, and you can act with that urgency as long as you have some kind of way to benchmark a reasonable market price. So it is not a free-for-all for school boards or any government agency to pick any single vendor for any single service, but we have done the steps in due diligence to make sure that what we're bringing to the school board tonight is a fair price for the services and certainly appropriate for our students' migrant education program. So with that, I want to ask for your consideration and look for any questions you might have that I can answer.
Question that I have, Matt, and I'm not sure if you can answer this, so it's open for anyone. I'm really happy to see that we're dedicating these funding, these therapists, these 2 licensed therapists to the migrant students and families. And I'm wondering, how are we doing in terms of meeting the needs of students that are not migrant students or families when it comes to mental health supports? So in other words, how are we ensuring that these services are available to all students that are not a part of the migrant program?
Sure. So I can answer it from what happens in my office. In my office, I think it was last month, maybe it was the month before, and COVID every week seems to stretch out to be either a day and a half or a month. It just kind of depends what's happening at the time. But we did bring items for similar services for all students. And in fact, that is one of the reasons why we have to bring this tonight, because that service provider used to provide these services, but because they've had to direct so many resources towards that broader service level, they couldn't meet the needs of this contract. And so that's why we went out and secured this smaller contract for migrant students so they get that additional service.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
I'll move to authorize the execution of a sole source agreement with the Family Service Agency of Santa Barbara County for migrant education therapeutic services in the amount of not to exceed $144,981 is presented.
I second.
It has been moved by Mr. Hollinshead, seconded by Mr. Valencia, to authorize the execution of a sole source agreement with Family Service Agency of Santa Barbara County for migrant education therapeutic services in an amount not to exceed $144,981. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Moving on to discussion items, item 8A, recap of teaching and learning supplemental programs, summer learning opportunities. Mrs. Grock, looks like it's yours.
Before Mrs. Grock goes, if I could, I just want to call out Mr. Thompson, who presented earlier, and Ms. Grock tonight, who will be presenting. These are their first times presenting in their new roles as directors for our district, and just want to thank them so much for their great work. And so with that, I'll hand it over to Ms. Grock.
Thank you, Ms. Dutra, and thank you to the board for having us tonight. It's a pleasure to present the Summer Learning Programs overview for the Teaching and Learning Supplemental Division. Want to start with a recognition of all of the pieces and people that made this happen. So thank you to the teachers, aides, and administrators for working through their summer to provide these wonderful experiences, to the Teaching and Learning TOSAs for their curriculum development, to the business and warehouse staff for ordering materials and delivery of pallets and pallets of materials, to HR for all of their hard work in recruiting and hiring positions. It was very difficult and they did a great job. To food service for providing food for all the attending students, to our maintenance staff who always keep our campuses clean and safe, and to all the T&L supplemental programs, formerly known as Expanded Learning, that team for all their hard work around the clock this summer to get these programs up and running. So you'll remember that in the spring, we brought to you the Summer Learning Catalog, and it was presented to the board in May. We're pleased to be here tonight to close this circle and give you the final results of our summer learning offerings. So our summer site academies began in June, and June was the biggest month for our programs, with all 21 sites hosting academies on site. These were held from June 14th to July 2nd. These are pictures from the Ontiveros program. Again, a call out to HR. We had a lot of vacancies to fill, and we really were able to fill all of these programs with highly qualified staff. You can see there a recap of all of the things that we offered to the 1,710 students who attended our site summer academies. There's some more beautiful pictures. We did follow COVID protocols, which at the time was a distance of 6 feet between adults and students and a distance of 3 feet between students. Everyone wore their masks. We used electronic resources and manipulatives. We did have some issues with materials arrival and shipping delays, as the whole world did with COVID, but we were able to really create an amazing program. These are some more pictures, including the offerings of one-to-one support and instruction with both the certificated teacher and the bilingual instructional assistants. We had lots of small groups with peer interaction and lots of hands-on learning experiences. We did have overwhelmingly positive feedback from all of the participants, including the supplemental programs that we used that were aligned to the core. We heard many positives about how the resources were compiled and organized for the teachers and the bilingual instructional assistants. And the students had a really wonderful time exploring science in a hands-on way. These are pictures from our Jimenez program. We move on now to the site summer bridge programs, which were optional. These include pictures from Tommy Kuntz Junior High School and Bruce Elementary. These summer site bridge programs were hosted from July 19th to August 6th, with alternating starting dates depending on the site, and 8 sites chose to participate. We included offerings of a Kinder Bridge program, a first grade Jump Start program, a second grade mini academy, a 6th grade mini academy, a newcomers academy, a garden club, Avid Excel, Avid Science Mission Impossible, College and Career Readiness, and the leadership class that you heard about at the top of the meeting with Fessler. We also hosted our ACES Camp Brain Game. These are pictures from the Ontiveros program. This was hosted in 2 sessions, one from June 14th to July 2nd, the other from July 12th to August 6th. We had 23 sites participate over the 2 sessions with these after summer academies. Next, we have the Los Adobes de Marias ACES satellite program. These pictures are from Los Adobes de Maria. This was open to any student, kindergarten through 8th grade, who lives in the Los Adobes de Marias complex. And they held their own after-school program, which was an after-school academy and bridge program from June 14th to July 2nd, and a second session from July 12th to August 6th. We also hosted our long-term English learners STEM program. And these are pictures of student projects from the Coding Academy. This was hosted from June 19th to July 30th. We had 140 students who were interested in the program, and we ended up with 114 attending and then creating a wait list because we weren't able to host them all. We're so excited about this program that we are bringing back the program for the ACES Nested MED program during the school week and in our Migrant Extended Day Saturday School as well in the fall. Here are some more pictures of student projects and coding. Next, we had our Migrant in-person summer school. These pictures are from Bruce. This was held in 2 sessions from June 14th to July 2nd and from July 12th to July 30th. For our migrant students, and this was hosted at one site, which was Bruce. These are some more joy-filled pictures from the Bruce program. And then finally, we had our migrant distance learning summer school options. These pictures are from some of the online programs that we offered, including Flipgrid, speech videos. They did a final presentation of a persuasive speech about someone that they think is a hero. And there was also a 3-week cumulative Study Sync extended oral project as part of the program. This was offered in 2 sessions from June 14th to July 2nd and from July 12th to July 30th. And then finally, our Migrant EPIC program, which stands for Engineering Possibilities in College. This also was hosted in 2 sessions from June 28th to July 2nd and July 12th to July 16th. And normally EPIC runs a really cool residential program. It's a week-long residential program, but due to COVID, the last 2 summers have been held virtually, and we had 75 students participating in that program. And then finally, we couldn't forget about our special ed extended school year, which was hosted at 5 sites in the district and was held from June 14th to July 19th. So that was a recap of our summer programs. I want to once again shout out to all of the people who made it happen. All of these summer learning opportunities would not have been possible without the help of all of the departments across the district. And with that, I will be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
I just wanted to thank you and really all the folks who did that work this summer. As you've thanked them already, we've come to understand and know that last year was a very long and taxing school year, and to have folks come out and really give that extra effort in the summer, that's exemplary on their part, but it also shows their love and dedication to their students and their community and their profession, really. Right, and so that's really something that we're very thankful for, and I admire in them, and I think it's just an amazing thing. And when I met with Jennifer and Rob to talk about this, all the different things that they had planned before the summer came and went, it seemed pretty expansive and was quite impressive, and the fact that you guys all pulled it off and did such a wonderful job, and to see the students engaged and excited in what they were doing is, it's really wonderful. So thank you, and as you said, thank you everyone who really contributed to all that, not just the teachers, but everybody.
Thank you. I 100% agree.
And I would echo that sentiment as well, Ms. Grock. I was able to get out and visit 8 or 9 of the sites in several of the different programs, and it was just so much fun to see the kids back on campus. And even though some of the classes were small, the kids who were there, were really engaged, and I could really see the benefit for them to be there, even if it were only for a couple of weeks. And it's after a year of virtual to hear that the Migrant virtual offerings have been popular and well attended is I guess a little surprising, but how great, because you can really reach a lot more students, that are in their homes for whatever reason, and they get those extra experiences. So kudos to everyone. And you are absolutely right. It was a tremendous amount of time and effort to make that all happen. So thank you to everyone.
Something that I noticed
Thank you.
during the presentation was there seems to be a focus on math and science and English. I was happy to see some occasional visual and performing arts, but it seemed to be more of an exception, as opposed to the rule. And one of the things that I notice when I hear from my high school graduates that I work with at Santa Maria High School, many of them tend to pursue careers, in the humanities, right? In English and social sciences, and many other fields, of course. So I would love to see more additional opportunities for our students to engage in the visual and performing arts, because even our bands, right, our local bands in our Pioneer High School, Santa Maria High School, these attract many of our students, many of our graduates from our district. And so I would love to see more opportunities for that incorporated into our summer programs.
Thank you. I will note that.
Thank you very much. I will acknowledge receipt of Teaching and Learning Supplemental Programs Summer Learning Opportunities with much gratitude. Thank you. Moving on to item 8B, overview of spring district assessment results. And once again, putting on a different hat. Let's see the quick change there, Mrs. Grock. Throw the cape on. So there you go.
Melissa, are you starting this or am I diving in?
You're starting it.
Okay, excellent. I took my glasses off hoping that would be enough of a change for you all to think that you were getting a different presenter. I don't know if it worked. So it is a pleasure to present to you our spring district benchmark summary results. I want to start by calling out that we have linked the executive summary and also included the last 2 executive summaries for you, so that even though I'm going to go through this very quickly tonight, you can spend some time looking at those detailed graphs and charts and disaggregating all of that data.
And Lori, if I can interrupt, I did provide the board with a copy of the executive summary in last week's administrative update as well.
Perfect, thank you. Want to start by really centering our focus, a reminder of our expectation, which is to move students a minimum of 1 grade level for each year of instruction. Our district benchmark allows us to easily and comprehensively assess student progress as both achievement, a measure of how near to grade level mastery a student is, and growth, a measure of how much a student moved toward the next level of achievement regardless of where they began the year, how far above or below students are from grade level mastery. So I know that the board is always interested in the research and national trends, as well as how our students are doing. So I did also include a link to the study by the Center for School and Student Progress, the July 2021 report, which looked at achievement and growth of students in the 2020-2021 school year compared to pre-pandemic levels. And the findings were not probably surprising to you, but nationwide, students across most grades were making reading and math gains, and we see that in our district as well. However, those student outcomes were lower on multiple dimensions. There was lower growth compared to pre-pandemic trends, lower achievement compared to what we would call a typical year, a larger decline relative to historical trends in math than in reading. And then, as we know, we always have to keep our eye on our special populations, and achievement was lower for all students, but it was disproportionately impacting elementary students, Latinx, Black, and American Indian and Alaska Native students, and high poverty schools. And of course, you know that many of those demographics are represented in our students as well. So this is a summary of how many students we tested. Our completion rate for the spring testing was more than 97% in all 3 subjects, which exceeded our designated 95% completion target rate. All of the schools met the 95% completion in all areas with the exception of one school, and that school exceeded 93% in each subject area, but didn't quite get to 95. So while we want to continue to monitor enrollment issues and access issues for students, given these completion rates, we do feel confident that our scores accurately represent the students enrolled in SMBSD at the time of testing. The equity gap exacerbated by COVID closures was not experienced at SMBSD, thanks to the really incredible efforts of classroom teachers and site testing coordinators. So a big thank you to the staff who made this test administration a success through encouraging students and also following up with makeup tests for students who were out. So here are the results. The achievement for the district is below average. The median status score of all assessments given in spring of 2021 equaled the 19th percentile. This is down from the 25th percentile we saw in the winter administration. Science and reading are slightly above the district median at the 25th and 21 percentiles, respectively, and math is slightly below the district median at the 19th percentile. So as a reminder to the board, we do report our district spring benchmark data for the 3rd through 8th graders in lieu of the SBAC testing that would normally be reported on the state dashboard. This flexibility was allowed by the California Department of Education and the Federal Department of Education when CASP testing was determined to be not viable for administration due to COVID-19 safety concerns and reintegration plans. As the replacement assessment, these results are required to be reported to parents and teachers, which is another reason that we are presenting tonight. So we do use these district benchmark assessments to project how students would do, or in this case, would have done on the SBAC in the spring if they had taken it. And what we found was that the results predicted that 23.4% of students would meet or exceed proficiency on the state summative ELA test, and 11.7% would meet or exceed proficiency levels in math. Our goal is for all students to move to a proficiency level of 3 or 4. This chart demonstrates the difference between SMBSD RIT and the NWEA normative RIT for spring test administration in reading. The green bars represent the NWEA norm, again, pre-pandemic norms, while the blue bar is the SMBSD average for the spring administration. As you can see, SMBSD students are all below the NWEA norm. SMBSD students begin kindergarten 8.69 points below the national norm and end 8th grade 12.26 below the norm. The largest distance from the norm is seen in 2nd grade at 26.97 points below. So again, when we talk about achievement, we also want to look at growth so that we are assessing not just where students are in mastery of standards, but how much they grew. Did they grow 1 year of instruction, 1 year of mastery for 1 year of instruction? The diamonds on this chart represent the expected growth for all students across the nation. These are national norms. From winter to spring, students in SMBSD have shown growth which varies greatly by grade level. You can see that kindergarten and 8th grade students showed an overall loss mean RIT score for reading, and several grades showed no growth at all, the 4th, 5th, and 7th grades. And none of our grades met their national growth target. This chart demonstrates the difference between SMBSD RIT and NWEA normative RIT for the spring test administration in math. Again, SMBSD students begin kindergarten 8.11 points below the national norm and end 8th grade 13.7 points below the norm. The largest distance from the norm was seen in 5th grade at 18.15 points below. Again, math by growth level, the diamonds represent the target growth nationwide trends, and the lavender bars represent the actual observed growth by grade level. In kindergarten and 8th grade, students showed an overall loss mean RIT scores for math, and several grades showed no growth, 1st, 7th, and 8th. And then finally, science, which is only administered to 7th and 8th grade. This chart demonstrates the differences between SMBSD RIT and NWEA normative RIT for the spring test administration in science. 7th graders scored 10.11 points below the national norm, and 8th graders scored 9.84 points below the norm. And in science growth, there was no observed growth from winter to spring in science in 7th or 8th grade, and they actually dropped a little bit. So we know that this is lagging data. March was a long time ago. So we always are encouraging teachers to focus on multiple measures to inform instruction, common formative assessments, trends for student groups and grade levels, social emotional development data, and then the comprehensive needs assessment plans that result from all of those data sources are used to plan and pace instruction and offer just-in-time supports and scaffolds in the classroom, always with the focus on our literacy priorities and our 3-year district goals, those being that all classrooms will show evidence of our shared vision of instruction to end educational inequality, and that all students will perform proficient or beyond in all academic areas. So our next steps are to continue to use multiple measures to inform our instruction and focus on a new year and new sets of data where we hope to see large trends of student growth. And so with that, I would entertain any questions that the board might have.
Thank you for pointing out the disproportionate impact for students of color when it comes to meeting the academic needs of our students. This is something that's not just impacting our district, but unfortunately shows up nationwide. And I'm wondering what is our specific plan in our district to provide these students with the extra supports that they will need?
So Lori, I'm sure you're waiting for me to take that one. So Mr. Valencia, that's a loaded question, right? We've provided the board with a number of different presentations that all together are the compilation of everything that we're doing. I'll take into account the presentation that Mr. Thompson did tonight. That wasn't just about disproportionality for students who get special education services. That was about disproportionality across our system. So that's one example of the things that we're doing, whether that be through academics, whether that be through our core instruction, our intervention plans, our tiered services of support, all of the different supports we have on that side, all of the different social emotional supports that we have in place that that we've shared a number of times, the long laundry lists of things that we have to support kids and to make sure that those educational inequities are not occurring. And then the professional development that we're doing in those areas for staff, not just teachers, but staff, right? And so it's a large body of work that we're doing to go after educational inequities, but it's not specific to a group, it's specific to our whole system, right? And so it would be an impossible task for me to piecemeal out, here's the 3 things we're doing, because it's actually very comprehensive what we're doing, so that it's actually systemic and then can be in place for years to come and just becomes how we do business here.
And I appreciated the connection back to the report that Dr. Thompson made earlier, because it's not extra support, it's what's really that core support that we're providing to all children. And that's, you know, the alignment around, you know, those expanded opportunities that build on that core experience. That's what I appreciated in Lori's presentation. We started with that vision, you know, that bold stand vision for success is to get all children there. And so, you know, as we go through these cycles, it's how do we focus on that core, build the core strong, so that extra support really is accentuating what's happening in the core. So it's a change. And Linda, you mentioned that when you're referencing the plan, this is unlike other plans that we've seen that are remediation plans. It's got to be built around the same core concepts and really sticking with the big rocks, that tier 1 instruction, and providing that support right there at the point of delivery.
Well, and another piece that was just mentioned tonight was, you know, putting into place the teacher tutors and that piece of the expanded learning program. So all of those pieces are meant, I believe, to be ongoing and to become part of a system that allows students to make more progress and to be more successful.
Well,
at least that's how I see it.
Well, and just a compliment and comment, Lori. It's good to see the initial data, but I think until we start to, with essentially 1 year's worth of data, it's going to be hard to make any kind of comparative analysis. I think more as we go to the future longitudinally and see a succession of these tests given. I know that we don't want it to be summative. We want it to be kind of formative as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that it'll allow you and your staff to disaggregate smaller groups. Looking at it grossly tonight, it looks like the 6th graders, for whatever reason, had a really good year last year, right? If you were to look at it grossly, but to not be able to kind of peel the layers of the onion away and see what things were being done where, and for a longer period of time, I think it's really just given us a start. But I appreciate that you're still taking the data and trying to make effective changes in what we're doing in our systemness.
Well, and I
thank you.
We implemented a new assessment system during COVID. The first assessment period was all done virtually. I don't see that we have any way to go except improvement.
Exactly. That's
we couldn't have picked, if we had a crystal ball, a worse period of time to initiate a new assessment program. So yes, it's disheartening. Yes, it makes everybody feel bad, I'm sure. Not just feel bad for, because it looks so dismal, but, we know our students suffered. They didn't, virtual learning may at one time, somebody thought, that we might go to that forever, but I think the evidence points directly at the fact that learning occurs in an interactive environment where you have a relationship with your peers and your teacher and the other people on your campus, whether it be, somebody who works in the cafeteria or the custodian or one of the supervision aides. Kids connect to a variety of people that are on their school sites, and they may say, because they want to be cool, that they don't like school, but that's not true. And the fact that they were so happy to come back, you miss the social aspect of it, if nothing else. So I look for this year to be to show a much better outcome, assuming we don't have any other natural disasters with COVID, and that's a big assumption. But thank you, Ms. Grock, and I
was going to mention a follow-up question that I have is, you had mentioned the NWEA norm. 90% of our students, come from low socioeconomic backgrounds. Are we being normed to similar students in that demographic, or are we being compared to, say, students from more affluent backgrounds with college-educated parents?
So we can provide that information to you again. When we first brought the assessment, I do think we shared with the board from your questions, the analytics that NWEA has on their norming. So we're happy to provide that to you again.
Right, because I do want to make sure, obviously, right? I mean, we do know that many exams are culturally biased, right? Are flawed. And I love the fact that we're using this as one measure, right, of our progress or lack thereof. I love the fact that our teachers are being encouraged to use multiple assessment opportunities. We know that helps, right? Giving students multiple opportunities to share what they're learning. And so I just want to make sure that if we're relying on this data, that it's accurate, right? That we're doing an apples to apples comparison of our students, so that we can make sure that we get accurate measurements of where our students are at.
Well, I think you're right, Mr. Valencia, and I think that's why when we do this longitudinally, I think we'll also see growth and be able to do comparative analysis on our subgroups and on ourselves. And so that's when it becomes formative, and we can make it instructional, create instructional value, and really see where some of the good stuff is that we're doing. With I mean, like you said, there's a whole number of other things that we can use, but I think that's really where we can derive some of that good information from. So I appreciate that, Lori and Melissa, so much. And Lori, I just had one recommendation for you, and this is if you happen to do two presentations in a row again, is you might put Joe on screen and just have him mouth the words.
It wasn't enough to change my.
Yeah.
And I will
Thank you all so much for the opportunity.
I will acknowledge receipt of the overview for the spring district assessment results and move right on to item 8C. Mr. Ontiveros.
This item really is the response to the ESSER 3 item. So I appreciated Rebecca previously talking about the plan, and this is really kind of filling in some of the gaps. But there are some public comments, and they're very timely because they are part of the presentation.
Luke, you're still muted.
You're muted. Thank you.
Says Brian from home.
Thanks, Brian, from afar. What I was saying was this is really filling in the gaps on Rebecca's ESSER 3 report, because this is where we are within this first few weeks of school. And there are a couple of comments that I'll be referencing in the overview, so they're very timely. And so this first letter to the board is from Lisa McNeil at Adam Elementary. And it reads, "Dear esteemed school board members, you will be pleased to know that my students have returned to school happy and eager to learn. I was almost brought to tears the first time they held self-selected books in their hands and eagerly began to whisper read. My first priority is to provide a safe learning environment for the children entrusted in our care. Their safety is the reason I'm addressing you tonight. In the spring, I wrote a letter to our district. I would like to share some of my concerns as I did not receive a response. The bold print below has been transcribed from our notice of potential exposure to COVID-19 email. Please note the word may. The district is taking, and this is italicized, the district is taking all necessary and required precautions. This may include the following measures: closing off areas used by the person who is sick, and the unitalicized or unhighlighted part. Regular classes continue to be conducted in classrooms as soon as the next morning. This may include opening outside doors and windows to increase air circulation in the area. And the comment is, I was informed that there is no requirement to air out of space unless someone who tested positive was within the space and within 24 hours. Most people do not get their test results within 24 hours. This may include waiting 24 hours before cleaning or disinfecting the area. That's from the notification. And then the comment reads, how can we both conduct a class in the classroom the first morning that a teacher is absent and wait 24 hours to disinfect the area? If we are teaching the following morning, 24 hours have not passed. If we are waiting for positive test results, the student may have already been in a classroom for several days. The notification reads, this may include cleaning and disinfecting all areas used by the sick employee, such as offices, bathrooms, common areas, shared electronic equipment like tablets, touchscreens, keyboards, remote controls, etc. And the comment reads, bathrooms and common areas are cleaned and sanitized regularly. Do the custodians receive a daily list of teachers who will be out so that before a substitute enters a room, all of the above items can be wiped down? Please add the telephone and microphone to the list. The letter reads, may include vacuuming the space with a vacuum equipped with high efficiency particulate air filter. And the comment reads, most classrooms are vacuumed nightly. However, this is sometimes skipped when we have custodial shortages. The notice reads, that may temporarily turn off in-room window mounted or on-wall recirculation HVAC to avoid contamination of the HVAC units. And the comment reads, we are currently seeing multiple students with extended absences across the district. I realize some exposure is inevitable. Perhaps our district response should not involve the word may. Thank you for making the safety of our students, staff, and families our priority. Respectfully, Lisa McNeil, Adams School. And that's in reference to the required communication that covers a variety of situations. So thank you, Lisa, for your comment. This letter is from Jose Rodriguez. Good evening. My name is Jose Rodriguez, and I'm a history teacher at El Camino Junior High. I'm writing this evening to share with our school board members my joy at being able to actually have students in my classroom rather than from a distance on Zoom. While Zoom was an unfortunate necessity, I'm daily reminded of the incomparable benefits of in-person learning. I'm able to look each student in the eye and hold a conversation, and few things are as effective for classroom management than a teacher standing beside a desk checking to see if students need help or a friendly reminder to stay on task. I'm also able to witness as students are reconnecting with classmates that they haven't seen since March 2020. These students have a lot of social emotional development to catch up on, the sort that no curriculum or professional development can facilitate. So there are a lot of great things happening in our classrooms and on our campuses. I also have to report that virtually all of my students are wearing their masks without complaint, though I do have a few repeat offenders who need to be reminded to keep their mask over their nose. As an 8th grade teacher, I'm also able to share that less than half of my students have been fully vaccinated, which does concern me. My fear is that despite all of the great things happening in our classrooms, we will have to return to distance learning and Zoom. I know that in the local newspaper, SMBSD stated that there were approximately 100 students who tested positive with COVID, but those are only the cases we know of. Each school site has about 100 absences per day, many of whom are out due to being quarantined or exhibiting symptoms of COVID. But without students being tested, we can't actually know the true number of students to have COVID-19. I recently had to be tested for COVID after receiving a vague email from the district that I was in close contact with someone who tested positive for COVID. And of course, COVID is surging in our community and our nation. There are some things we can do. We should have vaccine clinics at the junior high schools and invite students and their families. Orchid schools have had 2 COVID vaccine clinics since last May. We should also have rapid result testing at every site. This would allow staff and students return to the classroom rather than be quarantined. This would be especially useful with a sub shortage. I am so excited to have my students back in class, but let's keep our classrooms open and safe. Thank you, Jose Rodriguez. This next letter is from Mandy Jeffries. I would like, dear esteemed board members, my name is Mandy Jeffries, and I've had the privilege of teaching students in our district at the junior high level for 21 years. It is invigorating to be back in the classroom, attending to the needs of my students, holding them accountable for learning more. In real time, I can assess learning by walking around my classroom, reading body language, and make connections with students again. Unfortunately, at the junior high level, every positive COVID case affects 6 classrooms. In my own classroom, students who are quarantined revert to passively letting life happen to them. After all, students have had very little control of their worlds. Students received an education by passively sitting there waiting for the teacher. If the student wasn't engaged, what would happen? There was no real way to hold students accountable through distance learning. Because of this learned dependence, learning from home independently is not effective for most students. Getting tested to return to school sounds simple, but it is not that easy. For my own son, I was informed by the local urgent care that appointments would fill up for the following day within the first 15 minutes. I had to request a sub due to limited appointments. Luckily, his school has rapid testing available, and I can rely on them next time. Rapid testing is crucial for getting both kids and teachers back into their classroom. Rapid testing could also keep teachers out of the classroom when needed. We all know how difficult it is to find a sub and make sub plans. The entire school can be impacted when administrators have to cover classes. If teachers paid attention to every remote symptom of COVID, how many teachers do you think would actually be out? Every headache, every runny nose, sore throat. I wonder how many teachers are working through mild symptoms because they know the impact on their schools and their students. Wouldn't it be wise to have rapid testing available, at least for the teachers, or should we risk it? Our medical facilities are overburdened. How many parents choose to quarantine their children for 10 days as opposed to the hassle of testing? We need to find a way to make it easier for our families to remain healthy so we can do what we were designed to do. Keep kids safe, teach and learn. How can we not host a vaccination clinic and offer rapid testing? Thank you for all you do to invest in our students, our families, and our communities. Thank you for considering the needs of teachers. Sincerely, Mandy Jeffries, 7th grade social studies teacher at Tommy Kuntz Junior High. Then this last comment is from Patsy Mitchell. Hello, board. As you are aware, the COVID pandemic is far from over. I do herein plead with each of you, get rapid result tests at each school site immediately. Teachers do not want to miss school. Getting tested, awaiting results can make teacher lose 3 to 5 days of teaching. And a rapid test will allow all of us to know if we can walk safely into a classroom within minutes. Substitutes are not available and our own administration are filling in. This is not good for the staff, the school business that must be attended to on a daily basis, nor, and but most importantly, the students. They are not getting the high rigor education you demand we give them. If teachers cannot quickly assess if they have COVID, the tests are available, get them and let us use them and get back to teaching our students. These tests are absolutely imperative for each and every site as soon as possible. Thank you, Mrs. Patsy Mitchell. And I appreciate those comments because that's part of what the work that we're engaging in part of our reopening. So I've just got a few short slides because as Rebecca referenced earlier, we have a lot of stuff going on relative to these the requirements around COVID. And so I don't want to spend a great deal of time getting into the weeds, but just to give an overview of where we are at the moment. Let me get back to can you see my screen? Okay, I was on the wrong slide, however. What's that? So I just want to touch on 4 quick things. Are you back in, Mr. Lara? Okay. I want to quickly touch on the in-person independent study breakdown because as you recall, our last board meeting was the day before school started and all of these requirements had just been implemented. We had adopted that independent study policy in July and got the program up and running. Talk a little bit about case metrics. To Jose Rodriguez's letter, we have seen an increase and see it across the country. Fortunately, in California, we're a little more adherent to science and we're not seeing the impacts in schools as they are in Florida and Texas and Mississippi and other places. I want to give a little bit of an update on the quarantine update and give some background on the quarantining process, and then finally this testing status. So this is our enrollment as of today, TK through grade 8. We currently have 16,576 students enrolled. I think we projected 16,600, so we're right on cue. this is the number of students that are currently enrolled in independent study, 220. And so, as Dr. Palmerston mentioned in his article, his presentation earlier today, we did those overviews with parents. And as we presented to the board back in July, this independent study, remarkably different than distance learning, takes a lot more commitment and follow through. And so I'm gratified to see that, parents have chosen to return kids to school because, as everybody mentioned in their comments, teachers are thrilled to have kids back. Kids are thrilled to be back. And we heard it from those students at Fessler this morning. So that 220 is a number that, will change over time depending on conditions, but I feel good about that number right now. Because you recall when we did that early survey, it was as high as 7-8% we were thinking, and this is much less than 2%. Here's our case metrics. As Mr. Rodriguez mentioned, I did an interview with the paper last week, and so we had from August 5th. And because these windows move, you'll remember last year, every board meeting, I brought the data update from the county, and it's a moving window. So we went back to that week prior to school because we were notified that students had tested positive and staff members had tested positive before school started, but that quarantine period still fell within there. So as of a week ago, we had 100 positive student tests, 26 positive staff tests. That's grown over the past week. 142 positive student tests, 33 staff tests. And of those positive tests, we've had 76 out of the 100 had been cleared to return by August 31st. Of the 142 students, 105 have met the criteria and are eligible to return. Same for staff, 30 of the 33. So we're, I think it was Ms. McNeil mentioned in her letter, we can't, all we can do is try and mitigate the spread. We're not going to stop it. And so we continue to monitor those numbers. I want to give credit to Sean Chenoweth and Carolyn Kleinsmith and their whole team on really, doing a remarkable job of making those contacts and the communications out, because it's a serious challenge across the country, and it's a challenge for us at the moment. On the quarantine update, and we've had, and I don't have an exact figure, but we've had around up to 15% of students in a day could be quarantined, and again, that's based on close contact. And thanks to all of our site staffs who uploaded seating charts into a database so that we can do that off-hours contact tracing. You'll see from the numbers that those aren't not nearly as many of those are positive cases. So that's a gratifying fact. We have not had from County Public Health so far identified that there's been a transmission in school. It's all outside of school. So the work we're doing with the masking and the distancing within schools is been effective to this point. But to really reference the need for testing, I want to get into that a little bit, because these are the public health, Santa Barbara County Public Health guidelines, and this comes right out of the symptoms document that's on their website that's been updated several times over the last couple of months. So these are the requirements. Anyone who exhibits symptoms triggers that quarantine, and the symptoms are on the bottom, and I'll share this document. These are the symptoms. This is all off of the county website: fever, chills, cough, shortness of breath, fatigue, muscle or body aches. So the point of, virtually anyone can feel any of those at any point in time is a valid consideration, but it does trigger that consideration for quarantine. For individuals that are fully vaccinated, and we're still collecting that data from staff. Matt updated, provided some data the other day. We got about 86% of those that have responded so far are vaccinated. So there's a different requirement for individuals that are fully vaccinated, so they can refrain from quarantine following a known exposure if asymptomatic, if not demonstrating the symptoms. There's a recommendation for testing. So again, to the points in the letters, and I'll come back to that in a second. for unvaccinated contacts, for those contacts who are asymptomatic, who are not exhibiting any symptoms, you may discontinue self-quarantine under the following conditions. For students only, see this point 2 in red, if both parties wore face coverings and were within that school setting, there's what's called a modified quarantine. They can be allowed to attend school with face covering, excluded from extracurricular activities, if they test twice during the next 10 days. So again, a reference to testing, that we've got to get a testing protocol going. And so the point that these individuals make in these letters, it's not from lack of effort, it's from lack of availability. So I want to go through what that looks like, where we are to this point. And then I'm going to turn it over to Matt, because he's really been carrying the water on this, on these testing, he and Sean on these testing protocols. So this is the definition of this modified quarantine. Quarantine recommendations for unvaccinated students for exposures when both parties were wearing a mask. And you heard that our kids are doing a great job of wearing their masks. As required in K-12 indoor settings. These are the options. When both parties were wearing a mask in any school setting which students are supervised by staff. Unvaccinated students who are close contacts more than 15 minutes over a 24-hour period within 0 to 6 feet may undergo a modified quarantine as follows. They may continue to attend school for in-person instruction if they are asymptomatic, continue to appropriately mask, undergo at least twice weekly testing during quarantine, and continue to quarantine for all extracurricular activities at school, including sports activities, all those things outside. So it's just for the school day. And so these came out first week of August. I was happy to get this, we got this email from Public Health on August 5th, and it reads, your district has been identified as being eligible for additional support for COVID-19 testing for K-12 schools. And there were two options. One is this direct funding for testing personnel, to support personnel for doing that work. Well, the reference in the letters, we're having a hard time finding individuals for just about any role. So that was a challenge. But this option 2 is this end-to-end operational support. This option provides an external vendor who will deliver end-to-end operational support. Because even Ms. Mitchell's point about we could go buy the tests, you've still got to have people to administer tests. Yeah. You got to have the individual. So this end-to-end support is really an appeal. And so we were eligible. We filled the application, and I'll let Matt get on here in a second and explain what's happened since. But what we found in short order was there was such a response across the state. Public Health said, wait a minute, we're not ready to do this yet. So they repositioned, and now they're committed to coordinating this through county offices of education. So I'm in those county public health meetings weekly. We're still on hold with this state program. This is the California Department of Public Health program, because it's not just having tests, it's being able to administer, being able to analyze, being able to report, and there are some requirements along there. So I'm going to ask Matt to kind of pick up the end of where we are with this process and some of the other avenues that we're exploring at the moment. But before I do that, because I want to shut the slide off, I do want to, we do have a community health fair update. This flyer was approved today. This is this Friday, open to all Santa Maria Bonita families and staff at the Veterans Memorial Park over across from El Camino. We're going to be conducting a COVID vaccine mobile clinic and bringing in some other health resources as well to really bring some resources to bear in addition while we're pursuing this testing protocol. So I'm going to get out of the slideshow and just ask Matt to kind of give an update on where we are with those other contacts on that end-to-end testing concept.
Sure. Thank you very much, Mr. Ontiveros. We have been involved in, I want to say, researching and applying for and trying to plan for testing in about 5 different ways. And that really has grown almost double in the last 7 days. We still have available to staff the ability to request PCR test kits through Quest Diagnostics I've been getting those emails from folks. Sean has been getting those emails from folks and forwarding them to me. And I provide those people with the information they need to request their kit, and then kind of monitor their success in getting a kit shipped to them, et cetera. So that's still out there. We did, as soon as the state's offer to provide a support for testing, both in supplies and staffing, we did jump on. We requested through a survey to have that support, that end-to-end support. I have to say that ever since then, everything I've seen from the state has been about supplies. And they haven't really been providing me a whole lot of feedback around, and here's what the personnel piece looks like. We've been kind of working through that. I've been kind of working through that quickly to try and get the infrastructure in place, and then working out the details later, because there's some time to go still. But on the CDPH front, we do have our primary.health login set up. We have our organization entered into the website, and we've entered in each of our potential testing locations, which, you know, I'm kind of trying to think big about all the places we might want to test. We can work on where we'll actually test at some point in the near future. Right now, it's every location, including Sousa and M&O. The next step that I'm working on is to upload our staff members, right? Some of our staff members will simply be employees. Some of our staff members will need rights within that system to look up the status of someone's appointment or their testing or things like that. Some of our staff might be testers. Some of our staff may need to make changes within the structure of that or this organization. So I'm trying to get all that organized, and I have it set aside in a little spreadsheet. But what I need from the state, and I asked them in an email over the weekend, is for the structure of the data file that I need to create to import into their system. And I'm waiting for that answer so that I can upload our organization. The next step will be to gather our student data and upload it into that same system. Fortunately, after some time, I found the file structure that needs to be put in, so we can actually work on that. But I need to layer that in sequence, right? So that each of these pieces falls in its right order. And I'll say that at this point, I'm building this structure as if we have the people we need to do the testing when it's ready, right? And, you know, when we get to that point is how we then prioritize work, right? Who is going to test, who's available to test, and how big of a priority is it at each site and location. We heard from our teachers tonight. Many of them have this as a high priority. I think we all do. Instead of having to exclude multiple students in a classroom as close contacts, we can provide them with an antigen test, assuming that they filled out the consent form, and have them return to class. Test them 5 days later, have them stay in class and serve their quarantine in their classroom, right? That is the ultimate goal. That's the motivation between the 5 fronts we're working on testing. So that's on the CDPH side, trying to work through the mechanics. It is slow going. I think that there's labor shortage. I think there's supply shortage. I think I mentioned this to Luke today. There's been 2 or 3 training sessions since I started pursuing this potential for testing. And each of the times I click onto the link to take the training, it's not available. No one opens the WebEx. I've been in a frequently asked question, an office hour session that was attended by CDPH, but I haven't been in that initial training that is supposed to provide me with what, other than just the written materials, the guidance on how to do this. So I'm optimistic that eventually I'm going to find the right Zoom, the right WebEx to get into that, but that would be my hope. The third front that we're looking at is the opportunity to purchase supplies directly from a provider and have our own Csea waiver. Csea waiver is required if you're not actually a laboratory, clinical laboratory, in order to provide a test like a Binax Now test It basically involves filling out certain paperwork, providing documentation about what training you provide to folks so that they know how to properly do the test, what locations you're going to be performing those tests at, and who the personnel are who are going to be doing it. We've scratched the surface on that process but again, not knowing which one is going to get to the end zone first, we're pursuing all of them as time allows. The fourth way that just came up this week from Mr. Ontiveros, he had a meeting with SBCEO. Our friends at SBCEO are working with a private provider who is in a couple of other districts to put an MOU together to gather up all of the potential needs within the Santa Barbara County so that we can all jump in on these services. And they needed some background information from us yesterday as far as what our potential testing load might be on a weekly basis. So we shipped that information out to them to keep that moving forward. And then finally, the fifth way we're looking to try and bring testing into the Santa Maria Bonita School District is through private provider relationships that can provide that end-to-end service. We've spoken with a couple of different groups that sound very promising as far as really a start to finish procedure for registering families, students and families and community members, providing testing, either antigen or confirmatory PCR or PCR testing, depending on what it is, potentially providing vaccine clinics, not just for COVID-19, but if necessary, we could also offer flu vaccine. They also offer strep testing. They offer a lot of different services just based on their background that they can bring to the table for us, assuming we can find the logistics to make it happen. And we just started that conversation probably Thursday last week. So we're trying to work through that and again, bring these on as soon as we can. We're excited about that opportunity, but we also need to make sure that we thoroughly vet it and plan for it so that when we do engage in any of these five possibilities, that they really are ready to roll and meet people's expectations and more importantly, keep us safe and keep our students in the classroom as much as possible. So that's the nutshell on testing at this point.
Matt, I know a lot of the districts around us are having the issue too with materials not having enough testing supplies to do the actual testing. It's a requirement, but yet all of the things that are needed aren't there. And it's scary because we need those kinds of things in place. So it's like the cart before the horse, but we need this so desperately.
We're trying to keep all of our irons in the fire. It's just right now there's not much.
I get it. I think that's one of the most wisest things to do because some of the districts in the surrounding area, when we were at the Santa Barbara County Board meeting, I mean, they were trading small supply orders and borrowing from another smaller district. And if theirs came in, they would give it back. It just doesn't sound right. I mean, this is serious, very serious. So I appreciate we have all of the irons in the fire. I just wish the fire would bring that magical testing stuff that we need immediately.
And again, that is why we're trying to keep our options open so that we have, you know, if necessary, more than one venue to offer this.
Yeah.
And I did mention in one of my meetings with a potential vendor yesterday that, you know, we may have more than one group that might be offering these services if necessary. I don't think it will come to that, but I also want to be ready to if that's what it requires. You know, if one of a potential vendor does have supplies of personnel and the other one doesn't, right, then that's going to help us make a choice that day. But so again, just trying to diversify that risk of supply, and it's not just with COVID supplies; it's in many places right now. There have been significant labor shortages, either brought on by COVID or brought on by other circumstances that have really slowed down a lot of the things that we need, other businesses need, and we're all working to be creative and just keep our options open so that we can keep keep pursuing our goals and keep kids in school.
I get it, but and when in doubt, go to cottage, go to the emergency care because they'll do it rapid testing right there. I mean, just with the grandkids, you know, you just have to be safe. Thank God it's just allergies, but go take them for the COVID test. That's what we're doing at this point in time. You know, it's crazy, absolutely crazy. And there's no timeline in terms of, gee, wait, in a week or two, you're going to have the golden testing paper for your next piece.
Well, we do have a timeline though, October 15th for public school employees, for sure. If you've not been vaccinated, you have to be tested.
And we do have that ability to test. We've been, and like Matt said, we're accessing Quest.
Right.
It's this testing that will allow us to implement the modified quarantine.
And that's what we need. We need kids in school.
We need that. We're trying to find, you know, a door that'll open, that'll provide the opportunity, and we are committed to it. We will make it happen. Because that really is the next key piece. Because this right now is we've got people who are just working around the clock, just trying to keep kids in school without that resource. And
I know. I know.
So that's kind of where we are 4 weeks into school.
And every time I've walked into a school, they're sending kids home.
And that's what, when you go back to the symptom tracker, that's what the requirement is.
And that's what's required. I get it. I know, but it's still scary.
Amen.
It's so freaking scary.
Anything else? I will acknowledge receipt of information provided regarding school opening for the 2021-2022 school year, and appreciate the public comments from our staff members who hopefully are assured that we too have those same concerns, and people are working to try to get that resolved. It's not for a lack of effort, it's lack of availability. Moving on to item 8D, discussion of workers' compensation unfunded liability. Mr. Beecher, once again.
And I'll pass this off to my friend Brian King as well.
Thank you, Mr. Beecher. So this is an annual housekeeping item. I did send out information to you in the Friday board packet. Ed Code requires districts who are self-insured for workers' compensation claims to annually disclose in a public meeting the estimated accrued but unfunded liability for those claims. The district does have a healthy reserve of 1.36 million. And since we do have a reserve, then we don't have any unfunded liability. So with that, we're not required to make a reservation in our fund balance. So we would have an action item in future years if the district needed to set aside funds. So with that, I can answer any questions.
Well, hearing no questions, I will thank you, Mr. King, and acknowledge receipt of the annual workers' compensation claims information as presented, and move on to item 8E, report of actuarial valuation for retiree health benefits program under GASB 75.
I'll go ahead and take this one again. This is an annual housekeeping item required by Ed Code. We're required to describe the actuarial liability of the district's retiree health benefits. This is the estimated accrued but unfunded liability for the post-retirement benefits. We are a pay-as-you-go, meaning we only pay what is needed for that year. To qualify for the district's post-employment benefits, an employee must work for the district for 10 years, be at least 55 years old, and the benefits will end when they turn 65. So the actuarial liability as of June 30th, 2020 is $22,429,326. So what does this number represent? Actually, this is the net present value of potential future claims. So what that is it's the today's dollars value for what the future claims could be. And the valuation includes benefits for 59 retirees and over 1,100 active employees who may become eligible to retire and receive benefits in the future. In a nutshell, an actuary crunches a bunch of numbers. They look at healthcare costs, mortality tables, district cap, healthcare trends, and they try to create a formula to measure risk and uncertainty. And they come up with this $22 million number. So with that, I can answer any questions.
I'm not sure we would know what exactly to ask. We'll take your word for it. Yeah.
Know what that means, so that doesn't give us a lot of questioning to do.
Yeah, because it's all, it would.
The money's taken up already.
What if, what if, what if, what if?
I know.
And we don't have answers to the what ifs. So I will acknowledge receipt of the report of actuarial evaluation for retiree health benefits program under GASB 75. And thank you very much, Mr. King.
Thank you.
That brings us to the end of our discussion items for this evening. Board members, are there any reports or comments that you would like to make prior to adjourning? Yes.
Just a little bit. We've all alluded to it, and so as well as the teachers. I appreciate Jose's telling us about his kids being back on campus. We've all talked about how exciting that is, and certainly appreciative of all the staff's work to really make that all happen and happen as fluidly as possible. I have had a chance to talk to a few teachers, junior high, elementary, and aside from that, my question, aside from the excitement, my question was to them was how were they interpreting the kids' response, not only socially, emotionally, but behavioral wise, and the junior high teachers, it seems like, are having their kids just kind of getting right back in the flow. At least the small pull or talk that I've had with them, and it's been very, very positive. I talked to Joel Kringle informally the other day in passing, and he's just super excited about how his kids have come in and really just kind of launched right into it. And I think the elementary school kids are the lower grade kids are the ones who are having a little bit of a different time coming back in and experiencing the social norms about about interacting with one another, interacting with their teacher, and kind of getting used to being back in the classroom. And we have our children at home. We know what excitement does to behavior. But that's really about it. I think aside from what we saw tonight, maybe with some of the little bit of testing data that we have, I think for the most part, a large number of the kids are learning and doing well. There are some who are experiencing some difficulties, and I haven't had any corroboration or correlation made between the ones, say, that were on and really went on Zoom and were participating with fidelity and that last year and then now how that is turning out for them this year. So I think that would be something that would be, interesting to kind of get a feel for too. And you really can't, we had a lot of kids that were on last year, but they weren't necessarily participating. So that's not something that you can just kind of draw out of some kind of data set. So it's going to be interesting to see how that all unfolds. And again, I think, to your point, Ricardo, about visual and performing arts and STEM and what happened this summer, I think the exciting thing for me is that a lot of that stuff, and I told this to Jennifer when she presented it and Rob presented it to me and we talked about it, is that a lot of that stuff, and Melissa, you've alluded to it with having somebody in a VAPA position now, is I think those kinds of things now, as we start to get back in the fold, are going to be things that we can implement and continue to really have make an impact on all of our students. And for the ways that you were Ricardo were referencing, and just in general, really getting them different ways to access school and be excited about it. And so, you know, it's hard to make all those assumptions and get super excited because of what hangs over our heads with the virus and different variants. But I'm super encouraged by the few talks that I've had with family and friends in this district and others. So I'm encouraged.
Thank you. Anyone else? Well, I would just reiterate again how exciting it is to once again have students back on campus. I know the vast majority of our students, along with staff, are excited to be there, and so many people in every position on and off school sites have had to step up to fill in where those little gaps are, with shortages with personnel, and helping out in other little ways to make things run as smoothly as possible for every one of our schools. So sincere appreciation from the school board for all of that. And just remember to breathe. And we're not going to get there tomorrow. Allow yourself time to make mistakes, and just every day is a new day, and take it one day at a time. So hopefully that's encouraging. The challenges will keep showing up, and as we always do, and I do mean always, we meet it head on, and one way or another, it gets resolved. So thank you to everyone for your hard work and your dedication to the success of every single one of our students. And with that, I will close our meeting.